Okay. Um, 28 years ago, 28 years ago, my dad showed up to pick me up from school, which was odd because my dad never picked me up from school, ever. It just wasn't part of his responsibilities with my mom and his agreement after they divorced and all that stuff. And he started driving, and I asked him, "Why are you picking me up?" And he said, "Well, your mom and I want to talk to you." And as he drove through the neighborhoods, what I realized was that he wasn't going to our house. He was going to my friend's family's house, my friend Ari, his family. And that's when I kind of knew. Because I also saw my mom's car sitting in the driveway, and I saw some other cars sitting in the driveway, which was like a Tuesday afternoon. And I knew. And what I knew, and it was 28 years ago, so I was 9 years old. What I knew was that my close friend, one of my best friends as a little boy, what I knew was that he had lost his battle with leukemia. And I walked inside, and sure enough, sitting around was our close family friends. And 28 years later, yesterday, we buried his dad, my Uncle Larry, like a family friend that we called aunt and uncle. And Larry is just one of many, and Adam was the first of deaths that I've experienced in my life. And Eden and I were talking about it yesterday on the way home, because obviously anytime you go to a memorial or anything like that, it causes moments of reflection. And every time I go to a memorial, and I've been to a lot of them in my life, guys, a lot, I always come back to how I felt at Adam's funeral when I was 9 years old. Because I really remember clearly them talking about him and his life. And even though it had been a short period of time, I remember them talking about the impact that he had made. And so from a very young age, I just started to kind of think about, what do I want my life to look like? And then as more and more people around me died, what I started to do was I started to pay attention to what was being said at their funerals. And some people's funerals, not a lot gets said. And then other people's funerals, like the memorial I was at yesterday for Uncle Larry, things like he was always around for anyone who needed him. He lit up a room. He was always available to solve people's problems. When other people stepped down, Uncle Larry stepped up. You could feel him enter into a room. There was nothing that was too big for him to take on. Even when he was scared, he would never let anyone see it so that they wouldn't feel scared too. These are the types of things that they said about my Uncle Larry. And I was talking to Eden about it, and I thought about all of you. I really did. I thought about all of you. Because for me, what guided me, and what has guided me, what continues to guide me, is the question of what will people say at my funeral? And not from a place of ego, but from a place of knowing that my life had meaning. And from a place of knowing that in some small way, maybe I contributed to the betterment of my community and of my world at large. And so when I started to think that way, it opened me up to taking action in my life in a whole new way. And it brought a perspective to my life about what's important in a whole new light. And what it made me realize more than anything wasn't just that we only have one life that we're consciously aware of, regardless of what your spiritual beliefs are. But what it reminded me of was that you have the ability, we have the ability, unlike any other animal in the world, to determine the legacy that we leave behind. Now, for some people, legacy might mean leaving behind a lot of money, And I hope that you have the ability to do that. But more than anything, I want you to start to ask yourself the question of, how do I want to be remembered? How do I want to be remembered? And the reason I want you to think about that question is because I want you to take a step back and ask yourself the question of, when you stop taking action and you get caught up in stuff that's insignificant, do you want to be someone that gets looked back on and people remember you as the person that was always caught up in drama? They were always caught up in drama. They were always complaining. That's what I want you to start to think about. I want you to start to think about how every single one of your choices could immediately get applied to your eulogy. Think about it. It's a pretty high standard to hold yourself to. But imagine that every single one of your choices that you were about to make, or that as soon as you made it, would automatically go to your eulogy. It gets automatically encrypted. So whoever reads your eulogy has to include whatever you're about to do or don't do. So for example, I didn't follow up. I know I was supposed to do follow-ups this week. I didn't do any follow-ups this week. Boom, right to the eulogy. Wasn't passionate about following up with people. Every time you shame yourself, every time you tell yourself you're not good enough, spent most of their life self-criticizing. Every time you go into comparison mode, couldn't stop but be overly consumed by what everybody else's life was doing. Now, I know this is a heavy conversation. I get it. But you know what? No one else is having these conversations with you. No one else is asking you these questions in your life. No one. And I want you to start asking these questions of your life. Because what I want you to get is that forget network marketing and forget isogenics and forget all of that stuff. What I want you to get is that how you choose to show up every single day of your life is what you're going to be remembered for. That's what you're going to be remembered for. How you leave people feeling when you're done is all that'll be left of your legacy. You could build libraries, you could build orphanages, you could have a high school football field named after you because you gave a bunch of money. But ultimately, if you pay close attention to what gets said at memorials, it's the lessons that people taught them, it's the impressions that they made, it's the moments that they took, it's the amount that they cared, it's how big they played, it's the things that they overcame, it was their attitude through it all. And that's what I just want to start. I really want you to start to consider that when you're stuck, when you're not taking action, when you don't think you can do it, when you're convinced that nobody wants to do this with you, or that, maybe this isn't for you, or, people are quitting, or whatever it is. I just want you to take a step back and I just want you to ask yourself the question of, what do I want to be remembered for? How do I want to be remembered as a person? When times were tough, when my cycles were down, or people returned their or one of my first two people returned their box, or my best friend, told me I'm crazy and won't join. How do you want to be remembered in terms of how you respond to the resistance that you're going to experience in life, or that you've already experienced in your life? At what point do you want to make the decision to recognize that this vehicle that you've been offered is your platform to touch more lives than you probably ever would have had access to touching otherwise? And that here, in this place, in this time now in your life, you've been given a gift to give your gifts. All of us leave a legacy of some kind. All of us do. It's just a matter of what we want it to look like. And I want you to start to hold yourselves to that kind of standard. And if you're brand new to the team and you're brand new to the team calls and whatever, this is even maybe your first training call, great, perfect. What a fantastic thing for you to consider as you enter into this journey. Because the other thing I've learned is that when my best friend died, he was 10 and I was 9. And then another best friend died, and another best friend died, and another best friend died. What I definitely learned was that part's not in our control. And so it never scared me. A lot of people ask me, who are my greatest mentors? Above all of them, above my mom, above my mentors, above my mom, above everybody, is death. Because death has taught me every day since I was 9 years old. Every day, death has reminded me, you sure you want to do this or not do this? If death came knocking on your door right now, Zach, you sure this is what you want to do with your time? You sure these are the relationships you want to be in? You sure that's how you want to do business? You sure that the money's worth it? Because in any given moment, you don't get to say, hey, I want a few more weeks. Because what death will say to us is, well, what about the 35 years I've already given you? What were you doing with that? See, what I know for sure is that every day when my eyes open, it's the greatest day of my life because it's the only life I'm consciously aware of having. And that's why when I go out into the world, that's why I'm out in the world and I'm happy. That's why when I go out in the world, things aren't that big of a deal. That's why I work my ass off to build this business. That's why. Because I know that in any given moment, I could get evaluated by death and they'd say, bro, I mean, 37 years is a pretty decent amount of time if you were really conscious and you're really paying attention to your choices. What argument would I have? I wouldn't. Now, I know that I hold myself to a very high standard. I know I do. But guess what? It's that standard that's created the results that Eden and I have. It's an unwillingness to deviate from anything other than the long-term vision of what do I want to be remembered for? How do I want people to feel when I leave them? What's this all really about for me? Why is it worth it? Who am I willing to become in order to have the things said that I want people to say? Who are you willing to become? What stories are you willing to let go of? What lies are you willing to stop telling to yourself? What mask are you willing to rip off? What beliefs are you willing to surrender in order for you to become the person that people require in their lives? See, that's the other thing you'll learn if you go to funerals, is that those character traits of these people who played big in life, who left a mark, they were fundamentally necessary in the lives of all the people that sit in the memorial service. Them overcoming their own challenges in their life were necessary components for yesterday there was probably 300 people there. It's a pretty decent sized memorial, right? That was just the memorial, it wasn't even the funeral. Pretty decent size. And Uncle Larry, in some way, shape, or form, had touched every single person's life in that room. Mine for sure, obviously. But he and his ability to overcome his dad dying when he was 10 years old and going to the Vietnam War, not wanting to go but being drafted and losing brothers and sisters and then having his firstborn die when he was 10 years old. And he was 42 when Adam died. And the way that Uncle Larry still, and had his business go bankrupt twice, and still came back, still built another business, still raised 2 amazing young men of children because they had 3, still stood by his wife till the very end, in spite of a very, very challenging journey, so that every single person in that room, their lives could get better. How do you want to be remembered? See, what's cool about life is that it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what your challenges are. It doesn't matter what your education is. It doesn't matter if you had a perfect childhood or if you had an abusive one. None of it matters. Not to take away from those things. But what I mean when I say it doesn't matter is none of those things are preventing you from creating whatever it is that you want to create in your life. And here's what I can tell you. I don't know what 2019 was like for all of you. I know what 2019 was like for a lot of you. And I don't know what 2020 is going to be like for any of you, but I know what it can be for all of you. I know that 2020, starting right now, can be the most prosperous, fruitful, joyful, enjoyable, fulfilling, passionate, adventurous, spontaneous year that you've ever had in your life. As long as you're willing to start to live by a standard where you're constantly asking the question of, is this how I want to be remembered? Is this how I want to be remembered? This moment, right now, is this how I want to be remembered? And if the answer is no, then just change it. Then just shift it. Then just stop. Just stop. You're not a victim of anything. You're not a martyr. Your struggles, your challenges, I love you, not special. They're not. Your challenges aren't special because every person on this call, all the hundreds of, maybe who knows, thousands that watch these recordings, all of you too, your challenges are your challenges. That's life. You know? And there's a saying, an old saying that says, you play the hand that life dealt you. Oh, that's the hand that life dealt me. You know what's cool about poker? For those of you guys that don't know this about me, I played poker full time for a long time. In poker, oftentimes it's the person with the shittiest hand that wins. Why? Because they look at their cards and their cards don't matter. The cards don't matter. What matters is what everybody else is doing. And it's outplaying the other players. So no matter what hand you've been dealt, how do you want to play it? That's the big question. How do you want to play it? All of you are capable. All of you are unique. All of you are gifted. All of you are talented. Every single one of you. So it's not your problems, it's not your challenges that make you special. It's how you choose to handle them that will make you special. It's how you choose to handle them that will have somebody stand in front of the room and say, I've never seen anything like it. Wouldn't have mattered if a hurricane came straight through their house. They'd have a smile on their face. Wouldn't matter. They always had a positive attitude. Never complained. Never criticized. Never judged. Always took action. Always was willing to look bad while they figured some things out. They were willing to fail forward. They were willing to take risks. They were willing to put themselves out there and expose themselves in ways and be vulnerable in ways that I could have never done until I saw them do it. It's because they went first that my life has been changed. It's because they were willing to break the mold of where we came from in our life. It's because they were willing to demonstrate that people like us could do something different in our lives. Because of them, because of you, my life has been changed. I wish you saw in you what I know to be true in you. Because if you did, you'd stop dicking around. You'd stop getting caught up in shit that doesn't matter. You'd stop paying attention to stuff that has nothing to do with where you're going or who you're becoming. I wish you understood what was on the other side of some of the internal work that you're avoiding doing. I wish you understood how badly this world deserves your gifts. Yes, you as an individual. Not mine, not Eden's, yours. And if you think I'm talking to you, I am. Each of you. I know what the potentiality of your life can be. And I urge you, because you never know. I urge you to go do this thing. Not like your life depends on it. even though it does. But to go do this thing, knowing that other people's lives depend on it too.